Thank you for listening to today's episode. Before we jump in, I wanted to tell you about a new exciting program POC is launching for you. Between now and the end of 2022, this program is free because we want to beta test it. This program is going to be a bi-weekly meeting for 1 hour each time that we get together with a small group of other professional organizers so we can learn how to support one another and to help one another with ideas, all of the things that you need when you are an entrepreneur. So this is going to be a program with other women and other professional organizers that can come alongside of you, link arms with you, and get you to where you want to be in your business. So for those of you already listening to the podcast, you get to enjoy it for free at first and help build this program into what you need. So here's how it will work. We will have 3 tiers based on where you are on your entrepreneurial journey because we want to help surround you with other women that are in the same part of the journey you are. You will get accountability, ideas, and a designated time to work on your business bi-weekly. So the 3 tiers are getting started. This is for you if you are still in the idea phase of your business up to the launching of your business. Then the second tier is growth. This is for you if you are in the first year or 2 of your business and are still growing it. Then tier 3 is seasoned, which is for you if you have at least a year or more as a professional organizer and are maybe looking for ways to keep going, but you've been doing this for a while. So if you are interested and you believe that support equals success, then click the link in the show notes or go to proorganizerscoach.com and click the Support Equals Success tab to sign up. We are going to keep these groups small so you can really get the help on your business that you need. So go now and sign up so you don't miss out on what is going to be an amazing program and what I wish I would have had when I was getting started. So now let's get on with today's show. You are listening to the Pro Organizers Coach podcast. I'm Samantha Brown, a professional organizer and business coach. In this podcast, you will learn how to start and scale the organizing business of your dreams. So let's jump in. Welcome back to the Pro Organizers Coach podcast. On today's episode, I have Valerie CADY. She is north of St. Paul, Minnesota. She's on Instagram, Facebook, all of the places as Winnow and Spruce Organizing. She has been organizing for 7 years, and her niche is whole house resets. Thank you, Valerie, for being on the podcast.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Samantha.
How did you come up with the name of your business?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I did a lot of big Post-it notes in my house with all these different words that meant the same thing as organizing. And I used visual thesaurus, just researched all these different words. And winnow, W-I-N-N-O-W, is actually a biblical term. It's the act of separating the wheat from the chaff. So in third world countries, they still do it. Women use baskets and they wait for a windy day and they put all the grain in the husks, the wheat in the husks in these baskets. And they toss it and then the wind carries the husk away. So I think of it as we want our clients to keep the things that they really love and that kind of feed and nourish their soul, right? And then the rest of it can go. And that's the decluttering process. And then spruce is just the act of making it pretty, right? Making it look good.
Awesome. So on the topic of a whole house reset, what is a whole house reset?
So my niche project is, you walk into a house and really nothing is organized. There's just clutter everywhere, piles of things. Things are just random. So if you open up a closet, nothing really might make sense in there. You have clothing hanging in the closet, right? But everything else that's piled up is bags and boxes and just random objects that have gotten thrown in there. Sort of think about when you have company over and you're raising your kids and you quickly do a little tidying and you put all that stuff in a closet or a room. It's like that for the whole house. So nothing really is making sense. It's hard for them to cook. It's hard for them to clean. It's hard for them to maybe get into bed, but it isn't necessarily hoarding.
Right.
Inexperienced organizers will walk in a house like that and think, oh, this is a hoarding job. But it's not. The difference is that there's been some kind of event that has happened in this person's life that has caused their previously organized house to just completely become unmanageable. And that could be a divorce, a job change, a death in the family. It could be a medical issue. It could be a mental health issue. It could be that they moved on top of their family. So it could be intergenerational, like the kids have suddenly moved home with the children on top of the parents who own the home, but nothing got cleared out ahead of time. It could be a new baby. Could be just a variety of things that cause this to happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. And so those are the things that you would be looking for when you walk in for your consultation. And like you said, you look around and you see that nothing really has much rhyme or reason. And there's piles everywhere of just stuff. And obviously they have called you because they are at a point where they are overwhelmed and they are ready for change, or they would not have reached out in the first place.
That's right.
But being aware, the reason it has gotten to this point is because of some sort of trauma in their life has caused them to allow their home to get this way.
That's right. That's right. So it ends up where they can't find things easily because the things are located in multiple locations. You'll see a lot of like unopened Amazon boxes. You'll see bulk shopping from Costco because it's, where things just have never, all the macaroni and cheese is still in the box in that case. And maybe one got taken out, but it's laying in the hallway, not anywhere near the kitchen. I think of it as like this giant jigsaw puzzle where it's just so much fun to visualize. As an organizer, you can visualize where all those things are going to go and where are the proper homes and getting it all so it's a reset, right? What houses are naturally sort of organized just by the way that they're designed. But this kind of situation, it's just all disorganized. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so what I'm curious about is, should we talk more of like how you decide a time frame for that? Because if they've had a trauma, I'm sure it almost has to be a slower process.
Yes. Yeah. So let's start with, I always start with usually a phone chat, just to kind of build that rapport and find out their situation, kind of where they're at. It's neutral because they're calling me or, they always have to call me. That's how I determine if they're ready or not. I'm not calling them.
Right.
I'll call them back if they leave a message, but it's not like I'm in their home assessing. So it starts with that and just asking them some questions that will differentiate their situation from maybe a hoarding situation. So I always ask, are you able to throw away trash and food? Typically people with hoarding disorder aren't able to throw away their food. Even if they've eaten some of it, they'll tend not to throw away the rest of it because it's still okay, whatever. Mm-hmm. They have a really hard time throwing away trash. So that's kind of my, a clarifying question that helps me understand what I'm going to be walking into when I go see them. And then I just ask them, what's the biggest challenge in your house? And you can listen for these things. Like, I can't find anything that I need. It's taking me too long to get to work in the morning. I'm constantly late because I can't find my keys or my phone. I don't know where anything is. I have kids and we just aren't able to operate. It's hard to cook. It's hard to clean. It's, you'll hear these kinds of things. I'm just overwhelmed. I'm feeling depressed about it. I have a lot of anxiety about it, right? Because we know clutter affects women's brains more than men's.
Oh yeah. Men don't even see it.
They're blind to it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, they'll say like, my husband doesn't care anything about it. He just walks over the stuff, but I'm losing my freaking mind. Then I do an initial consultation always to start with, because I want to make sure that not only I'm a good match for them, but that they're a good match for me. It's my kind of weeding process, just because I have turned down jobs before for various reasons. And it's like a protection. You also want to know that you're going to be able to have a relationship with this person. When you're resetting somebody's home, you're going to see everything. You're going to see everything from their underwear to their paperwork to their finances. So because it's all mixed together, you believe what we find in underwear drawers, right?
Right.
Because stuff just gets thrown in there. So you want to make sure that you can be able to have a conversation and that your personalities are going to mesh. And that consultation lasts about an hour to an hour and a half. I like to look at 3 priority spaces so we kind of know where we're going to start. And then I'm looking for mice, evidence of mice and insects. I'm looking for pets, like do they have cats and dogs, and what's the cleanliness of the home to know, am I going to be charging a little more because I'm going to be wearing a respirator mask? I'm actually looking for odor, mold. Typically in these kinds of homes, it hasn't been kept clean because they can't. And there's also some home repair stuff that needs to happen. So I'm assessing if the home is actually safe you would believe, because you're all organizers, what you find sometimes that people will just kind of put up with that you would never maybe put up with in your own home. And so just kind of assessing those things to see if it's a safe enough environment. What are their stairs like to the basement? I live in the Midwest, so houses tend to be older, damper, that kind of thing. So I'm looking for mold and all of that. So, and then I do write up a plan afterwards and I send it to them because and I know a lot of organizers have differing opinions about that, but I want to know that my client and I are on the same page with what's going to happen in their house. And I feel like it's fair. I would never hire someone to come to my house without knowing exactly what they were going to do for a home remodeling project, right?
Yeah.
So I do put together a nice plan for them. And then I give them a resource directory too with all of my vetted contacts for everything from, house painters to, people that will haul away donations to, I don't know, just anything involved with, upholsterers, just any kind of house stuff that you want done, appraisals, like for selling things, all the donation places in the area. And I don't contract. I don't act as a contractor on these kinds of jobs. I empower my clients to then make their own phone calls, to make their own arrangements, to have things taken away if they need to drop off their own donations. I don't do any of that for them because I want them to do it at a pace they can manage so that they understand that it's so much more work to actually declutter than it is to decide not to bring those things into the house in the first place. To really be mindful once the house is organized to keep it that way. And that's going to require some vigilance and discipline. So
is the typical job you going in and getting it done all in so many weeks, like back-to-back sessions, or is it, once a week until it's done because of the emotional trauma and them having to take the time to process? How does that normally play out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So usually start out with 3-hour sessions. It's rare that someone in this position is going to be able to do 6 hours because they usually have some medical, physical, or else they're just really busy. Maybe they work full time or have a side job or, they've got a lot going on. Otherwise they would have been able to stay up on this in some way, shape or form. So 3 hours is about all they can manage. And then I like to space it out where it's not every day. So I'll only do 5 days in a row if it's a crisis, like they have to be out of they're moving or, that's a whole different kind of a job. But these cases, I like to spread it out so that they have time to assimilate. Because remember, they've been living this way for a long time. So even though I couldn't tell you where the batteries are in their house, they have several ideas of where they could be. But if we go ahead and gather all those up and move them and put them in a designated place, that's new. They're not going to maybe remember that they're there. So if we start reshuffling and moving things too fast, it can get overwhelming in a different sort of way. I actually like to do home resets, over a couple of months usually is what it takes. And then that doesn't include photos and memorabilia, what they have going on in their life. So I usually like to do 2 mornings a week or 2 afternoons a week to start. And then we just see what they can manage. And some people, they really get the capacity. They build up that capacity to make those decisions. And we can work much faster too than that. So they'll start booking back to back, or they may do a 6-hour day to tackle the garage or the basement, right?
Yeah. The harder jobs that take a little longer just for the one room.
Yes. So it's really about just listening to your client and determining kind of what pace they can manage. And then it's a little bit of an experiment. Well, let's try it back to back and see how that goes. And a lot of times they'll say, yeah, that was too much. I was exhausted after you left. And I'm like, okay, let's space it out a little. There's no rush here. Yeah. It took so long for this to end up this way. It's not going to disappear over, just a week. Yeah.
So when you go in and you help them to declutter and to, decide what to get rid of, do you typically try to focus on one room per session and staying in that room? Or
I always like to say kitchen and bedroom is kind of first because, well, first of all, their bedroom is a great place to rest and restore in. And with whole houses, they do need a place to relax that's totally clear and clean and nice for them. That's super important. So a lot of times we'll start in the bedroom. Sometimes there's one area of the home that's not too bad that I feel like, okay, they've got a place to rest. So that's great. So then we look at the kitchen. Are they able to prepare meals easily? If they're not, then that's a huge priority to be able to cook and food, right?
Yep.
But if those 2 areas are kind of okay, then I like to start in the garage. I know, go big or go home, right?
Yeah.
Because typically with whole house resets, there's a lot of stuff that is accumulated that needs to leave the house. And if you start piling things in their home for them to donate and sell and all that, that can get overwhelming in a whole different way. So if we start with the garage, then we can clear out the garage and have zones for these things, for all the stuff that's got to go to recycling, all the trash, maybe there's a little dumpster that we're going to put in the front of the garage. There's going to be places to stage furniture for selling, or, and then all the donations can easily be taken in and out. So that's kind of how I like to do it.
Yeah. And another quick tip, like a quick pro tip for anyone listening. One thing I've learned, especially if you walk in and you realize, okay, this is a very big job. It's going to take some time and multiple sessions. One good thing about starting in the kitchen, not just for them to be able to make meals, but it's also normally they're not emotionally attached to those items in the way they are in other areas of the home. And so for me, it gives me a chance when I'm working with my clients, if we can start in the kitchen, to get a sense of what are they willing to let go? What is important to them? Why, if they have 10 spatulas, if they're going to still try to hold on to 10 spatulas, we're going to have a really hard time when we get into like the really emotional stuff that like grandmother gave you, or,
even those personal care products in the bathroom. If you have so many, well, you only have so much space to keep them all. And if they all cost a lot of money and they all work to some degree and there's enough left of them that maybe you want to keep them all, that's going to, it's going to be a little more challenging as an organizer to organize to their values that way. And in the garage, no one's really emotionally attached to anything in the garage. Kitchens are tricky though. I just had a client the other day she said she was surprised at how hard it was to make decisions about the items in her kitchen. So sometimes that can trip women up too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's so different.
I know, aren't they? And with the kitchen, you can also like normally things like pantries sometimes are a little easier because it's like, okay, well, it's expiration dates. Like and then the stuff you don't use. So even if it's as simple as starting, maybe not in the whole kitchen, but just the pantry, just to get an idea of, are they willing to release? And then I love those clients that are just like, okay, it's fine. Just let it go. I'll release it. You're like, yes, let's get it gone.
I know it. I have Staples had those little no buttons. One of my clients gave it to me. We found it when we were decluttering and she gave it to me. And so if there's a client that'll ask you, do you think I should keep this? And I just have her press the no button.
Oh,
that's right. No, like 5 different ways. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah. So you said earlier that you send them a plan in the beginning. So at that point, all you've done is had a conversation on the phone and you've done the walkthrough for an hour to an hour and a half. So when you're sending them the plan, like determining how much time it might take and, all of those types of things, how do you know those things ahead of time to send a plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's a little bit of magic. It's a little bit of every organizer has their superpower, and for me, it's knowing how long things are going to take. And I don't know how I know this exactly. Like you said, I've been doing this for 7 years, but it became really evident that at first I timed myself like we all do, right, to see. But typically a whole house reset, I have it, kind of on a spreadsheet how long they take, and it's about 45 hours is the average. So usually we start with a 30-hour package because we're going to burn through. That's 5 6-hour sessions. I work in 6-hour sessions. So, and that's 10 3-hour sessions. That's a lot of time. We're going to get a lot done. So a closet usually is 3 hours. A kitchen is usually 9 to 12. It just depends on how big the kitchen is. Sometimes you can do a kitchen in one day, but not very often, not a reset, because the food's going to take a whole day.
Yes.
It's in so many different places. It's not just the pantry, right? It's the oils, the vinegars, the spices, and then there's usually a baking cabinet of some sort that's got a lot in it. So I give a good faith time estimate. If I can't see the floor though, so let's say we open up the guest room and it's completely packed and you can't walk in there, just a little trail. I always say if I can't see more than most of the floor, then I can't give a time estimate for that room.
Oh, that's a good thing to say, because like you don't know. You have no idea when you start pulling that stuff out what other little fun things you're going to find as you're pulling those out.
Right. And with rooms that have a lot of boxes, you have no idea what's in those boxes. And the client, a lot of times, I always ask them, what do you think's in those boxes? They'll go, well, I know there's this and this, but that one, I'm not sure. These, no. So on all those things don't belong in that room. They all have to go somewhere. And so they might have to go in the closet that you organized the last time. And so it depends on how much of it's going to be affected. And you got to allow time for that because you don't want to have things piling up that are meant to be organized into a space that you already did. You actually want to be able to go and put them in that space. So, and then more decisions have to be made. So you got to allow them a little more time.
Yeah. And so those types of rooms would actually be good to leave towards the end because then as you unpack those boxes, there already are places for them to go.
Maybe, but it depends on the client because they may need that guest room for the grandchildren that are going to be visiting next month.
Right.
And so now we have to start with that room and we're going to be making zones in that room with the categories to be able to, when we get that room cleaned out, we know that's going to go in there. And I kind of like to put things in the vicinity. So if we got it all together and we know it's going to go in that closet, but we haven't touched that closet yet, we'll put it inside and just set it in there.
Yeah. For when you get to that session.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I always tell them it gets worse before it gets better.
That's my phrase. I say that
to
every client. I'm like, I promise you it's going to get worse before it gets better, but it will get better if we keep going. We just gotta keep going.
And to have that room to rest and restore in, we don't mess with that. Because then I tell them you can just go relax. And then I also tell them if they ever just really feel overwhelmed, just open up the silverware drawer because it's perfectly organized in every home.
Right.
And just know that you got this.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
Right. Like, that's awesome. You've already done that drawer. You're good.
I learned this from another organizer, but I call it the lesson of the silverware drawer. And I'll either do it at the consult or at the first session, but I'll just say, there's one place in your home that's perfectly organized. Can you guess what it is? And they'll look around like, what are you talking about? My house is a wreck.
Yeah.
And then I'll tell them if they don't guess it. And we open it up and I said, there's just the 4 principles of the silverware drawer is how we organize your whole house, right? Like with like, single and consistent home. Everything's returned here after you use it. And everyone agrees that this is where the silverware is. And then the bonus, of course, is that perfect storage container that everybody has in their silverware drawer.
Right.
And you just see the light bulb go off. They're like, oh, okay, this makes sense. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I want my whole house to be just like my silverware drawer. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And maybe some labels, we might put some labels in there too. But.
Yeah. Yeah, I have found, I don't use a ton of labels because when I first started my organizing business, the first thing I bought was a labeler, before I even knew the name, I was like, oh, labelers, because you think you're going to label everything. And I found that I do, but it really depends on the client. There are certain clients that we don't even think about labels whatsoever. And then there's other clients that it just makes sense to label this stuff. And even if it's a label that, maybe even under the basket, I've had to do that with some of the clients that I have where I'm like, look, let's just put it here. So if you pull this basket out, you remember what goes in this basket if you don't want to see the label. Because some people don't want to see the labels. But I think it's so fascinating, the different types of people's brains and, what organized means to them. Yeah.
And that's really knowing your client, getting to know them and learning about their brain, understanding how their brain works and organizing it for their brain, not for your own. It's just a little tricky because we like it super organized, but not everybody cares about that.
Yeah. I actually just had a lady I recorded with the other day and we were talking and she said after she does the phone call and then either before or after the consultation, when she sends her packet to them, she includes the clutter bug quiz.
Oh, sure.
So she knows if they're, a bee or a butterfly or, all of those just to help her get an idea before she even gets started of how their brain works. And I was like, that is genius. Because it's already getting them thinking about organizing and it helps us remember what they are and how that helps them because you learn very quickly, like you said, if I walk into every home and organize it to fit me, they're going to be calling me back in 2 months being like, this does not work.
That's right. You're going to be coming in for a whole house reset. No
Yeah.
One of the things that I used to do, I don't do it anymore, but there's a research institute out of University of Pennsylvania, and they had a happiness test. And I would have my clients take it. It was kind of an intense test. It was 150 questions. It defines 1 out of 25 values that you hold. It gives you your top 3. It puts them in rank order 1 through 25, but I always look at the top 3. And that would tell me if beauty and excellence was important to them, then we had to make sure it not only functioned, but it looked really good. If fairness and equity was in their top 3, they had to make sure that everything went to a certain person and it was fair. So if they had 3 kids, they had to make sure that things went to each kid or was offered to each kid. Mm-hmm. Or they really had to make sure with their partner that they weighed in on a lot of the decision making. So that was really interesting. It kind of outlined if you were perfectionistic, just whatever your values are. And that would help me as an organizer to know ahead of time how the decision making was going to go, why they were making the decisions they were.
Yeah. Yeah. And, when I first got started, I thought that consultations would be like, 20 to 30 minutes. Like I'm just going to walk in, we're going to walk through, it'll be fine, fast, and I'll be out the door. And the longer that I've done this, the more I realize how important actually staying longer at that consultation is. It not only lets you understand them, but it builds rapport with them to trust you for when you come back to actually start organizing. Mm-hmm. And the more information we can get about our clients, especially when it's huge projects like this, it is vital to making sure that they're going to be able to maintain and that we are going to actually help them, not just make it pretty or.
Yes. And that we're going to be able to support them through the process too. Because like you said, if they have trauma, a lot of times that's how it's become that way, some sort of trauma. And, if you skip over that in the consult, and then you're going to be surprised by it. And it could really derail the organizing because they might just suddenly fall apart on you or have a panic attack, or you don't know the things that might trigger them. But if you know that there's been loss and that this contributed to it, you can watch out for that as you're choosing what you're going to have them sort, for example, or what you're going to present them with. You can make those decisions to make the process easier on them. I don't want to wear my clients out. My goal is independence for them. Yes. I want to get their house reset and have them, maybe we're going to end up doing some maintenance, sessions over time to get them kind of used to this new way of living. But then I'm hoping they're going to be able to take it and run with it on their own.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is a fantastic goal because, for instance, for me, I've had some people reach out to me and they say the only reason I reached out was because of your before and after photos. As in the before photo, you couldn't see the floor and it was total chaos.
Yeah.
And when they're looking around their home and then they're looking up organizers and they're seeing these beautiful photos with beautiful, which are great, but they immediately are like, oh, I feel ashamed. I'm going to feel judged. I can't have them in my home. Mm-hmm. And so on mine, I try to make my first page pretty, but I also try to make sure my before and after section is very realistic of what it looks like going in, before and after a session. And I've had multiple people tell me that's the only reason I felt comfortable enough to reach out to you was because I could see you have already done homes like this and that, you wouldn't judge me.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you're used to this. Right. Yeah. And that's a really good point too. I know in the industry, we're so focused now on the media is focused on containers and making it look a certain way. And that's a lot of pressure for organizers. I feel like where, my clients, we're going to use up what they have. I don't want them spending a bunch of money on containers when they're paying me, significant cash to help them get organized. So they like to use what they already have. And every house, most of them have so many containers. But it's interesting with whole house resets how they don't necessarily have the right containers. We kind of are making do, and then I'm kind of suggesting this is going to function better if we get all the same size in here or all the same type.
Right.
But maybe you can go to the Dollar Tree or something,
Yeah. Yeah. And there's definitely those options because, like you said, it's a significant amount of money. And I even think for myself, I had to hire an electrician not too long ago. And he's like, okay, it's $130 per hour, 2-hour minimum. Even as an organizer that makes great money, for me, I was like, $260. And then they get here. I had left the money because I was going to do my job. And my husband calls and says, honey, they just said it was 325. And I was like, wait, 325? We agreed on 260, a 2-hour minimum at $130 an hour. And he said, oh no, they said their time started when they left their previous home, not the office, which I would have somewhat understood for mileage, but that they start their time clock when they leave their last job. So if they stop to get gas, if they stop to get lunch, if they whatever, that whole time they're charging me $130 an hour.
Wow.
I was like, are you kidding? And he's been in business for like 30 years, this company has. I was shocked by that, like shocked. It made me not ever want to hire them again because first off, you didn't tell me up front. And then second off, I felt like you were gouging me for my money.
Yes. And I think as organizers, being transparent, having a good agreement that you're having them sign, is important. Didn't always have that. And it just makes it so that you don't have any difficult conversations later.
Yeah.
It takes away all the difficulties.
And then, asking them their budget, like asking them, what is your budget in all of this? So A, I know about how much time I have so we can do the more important stuff first. But B, when it comes to containers, are you someone that budget really is not an option and you want the fancier, $75 basket? Or would you rather me go to the Dollar Tree and help look for some ideas that way? And so knowing that is important.
I know it really is. But realize too, with whole house resets, they often don't even know that container options are available.
Right.
So like it's all new. And this is not a client that's you're going to show up at the session and they're going to have bought everything that you need.
Right.
Or even the links that you suggested. That's just probably not going to happen.
Right.
It's a lot of staging. And I do bring staging stuff. Like I'll shop at Dollar Tree or get things on sale at Target. And I'll bring in containers and then I tape my business card to the bottom of them. So then they know that they belong to me. And I tell them the plan is you're going to replace these and then I'm going to get these back.
Do you ever get them back?
I do.
Oh, okay. Instead of them purchasing the bin from you that you have allowed them to use, you tape your business card to the bottom, you leave it so they have a bin in place where it needs to be for that session. And then you ask them to order that same. Do you send them like a link?
I send Amazon links, but a lot of people don't like to shop on Amazon. They'd rather stop at Walmart or wherever it is that they like to shop. And so I just tell them, when you replace these, I'd like to get these back. And usually, if it's a big project, I'm going to be seeing them again and again. But it's amazing. I buy my own boxes too, because how many clients I've been to, we were working together and we don't have enough boxes. It drives me crazy. So I buy those grocery tote boxes. They're not very expensive. And then I tell them, I'd like these back. So if you were using them, but then, we're using them to stage stuff, but then I'd like them back. And I have clients, I'll see them a year later and they got my boxes for me. So,
which is nice because then you have them for the next time.
And none of this stuff is expensive. Like I'm using just those plastic shoe boxes with lids. Those are like next to nothing at the Dollar Tree, just to have some drawer organizers and stuff because they've not ever had this typically. They've never used drawer organizers. They don't really even know what they are. And so if you set it up, stage it with just cardboard boxes, even just little phone boxes, whatever they have, they see they understand how it works and they start using that system and they're like, okay, I'm ready to get the ones that'll stay in here forever because this is working for me.
And it gives them time to get used to having it that way. And then it also gives them time to come up with a little more money to purchase the products. Honestly, like I think we have covered everything about whole house resets. And I am so thankful that this is even a thing that people are doing because it's such a need and that I don't think people realize. Because, when you're first starting, you think, oh, it's going to be all pantries and like under a bathroom sink and it's going to be beautiful and closets. And that is part of it. But this other side of it that's behind the scenes that no one's talking about is really everything you just talked about, like the whole house reset. The whole house needs help, but it's life-changing for our clients.
It is. It's transforming for them. I'm actually writing a book right now about what happens when it's not a how to get organized. It's what happens through the process.
Oh, nice.
All the stories. I have permission from 35 clients so far to write their stories and what happens after you get organized. Because I think if people know what would happen for them after or during, it makes the process a lot more possible, right? More relatable. And to understand that, yes, you're not alone, but you can relate to all these people that have been successful at it, that are just like you.
Hearing other people's testimonies and what they've been through and what they've walked through, but look at them now. And, like it gives you hope when you feel hopeless.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's an amazing book. I'm very excited. You'll have to let us know when it gets published and come back and talk all about it.
Okay, I will.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
You have been listening to the Pro Organizers Coach podcast. Go to the show notes to find all of the links mentioned in this episode and hit that subscribe and automatic download button so you don't miss a single thing. Thanks for listening.